The year is 1521. Tenochtitlan, the island capital of the Aztec Empire, a city of 250,000 people, now starving, sick, and surrounded. Two emperors had already fallen, the empire's greatest warriors massacred. A deadly smallpox epidemic had swept through the streets, claiming tens of thousands of lives. One young emperor remained, Cuauhtémoc, and standing against him was a single relentless Spanish soldier, Hernán Cortés. Cortés arrived in the New World in 1506, hungry for wealth, power, and glory. By 1519 he had both a plan and a problem. His official mission was simple: explore the coast of Mexico. But Cortés had far bigger ideas. With just 630 men, he set out to conquer an empire of millions, without permission, without backup, without fear. His greatest weapon was not his cannons, it was not his horses, it was politics. Across Mexico, dozens of peoples lived under Aztec rule, paying tribute, providing slaves, living in fear. Cortés saw their anger, and he used it. First the Totonacs, then the mighty Tlaxcalans, a confederation of over 150,000 people who had resisted Aztec domination for decades. One by one, the enemies of the Aztecs became the allies of Cortés, and together they marched straight into the heart of Tenochtitlan. Emperor Montezuma received them cautiously, but Cortés did not come as a guest. Within days he had arrested the emperor inside his own palace and taken effective control of the entire city. But then, everything collapsed. While Cortés was away from the city, his deputy launched an unprovoked massacre, cutting down hundreds of Aztec nobles and their families at a religious festival. The city exploded in fury. The Spanish and their allies were trapped, surrounded, buried under a storm of spears, stones, and arrows from every rooftop. On the night of June 30th, 1520, Cortés led his forces out of the city in darkness and pouring rain. They called it La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. 800 Spaniards dead, over 1,000 allies gone. All the gold, all the cannons, all the gunpowder lost at the bottom of the lake. Most men would have gone home. Cortés turned around. Within months he had rebuilt everything. New soldiers arrived from Spain. New alliances were formed across the region, and deep in the mountains of Tlaxcala, 13 warships were constructed entirely by hand, carried piece by piece over the mountains, and reassembled on the shores of Lake Texcoco. By May of 1521, the final siege had begun. The aqueducts supplying fresh water to the city were destroyed. The causeways were blockaded from all sides. Spanish warships swept across the lake, crushing the Aztec fleet and cutting off every supply route. City after city around the lake had already submitted to Cortés. Tenochtitlan stood completely alone. Day after day, Spanish and Allied forces pushed deeper into the streets, tearing down temples, dismantling entire city blocks, closing every possible escape. Inside the city, famine set in, then starvation. Women were conscripted to fight. Children went without food or water, the streets filled with the sick and the dying. Still, Cuauhtémoc refused to surrender. For 75 days the defenders held on, fighting street by street, canal by canal, with nothing left but determination and desperation. On August 13th, 1521, Cuauhtémoc was finally captured while trying to flee across the lake with his family. He was brought before Cortés in silence. The greatest empire in the Americas was gone. But the true cost would only become clear in the years that followed. Smallpox, Measles, influenza, typhus. Disease after disease tore through a population that had no immunity. The population of central Mexico collapsed from more than 8 million people at the time of Cortés' arrival to barely 1 million just 50 years later. Entire civilizations, languages, and ways of life vanished forever. Spain, meanwhile, grew extraordinarily wealthy. 180 tons of gold and 16,000 tons of silver were shipped back across the ocean, funding wars, building cathedrals, and fueling the rise of a global superpower. A new world had been conquered. But the price of that conquest, measured in lives, in cultures, in centuries of suffering, is something that history has never stopped calculating. The story of Hernán Cortés and the fall of Tenochtitlan is not simply a story of victory. It is a story of ambition, alliance, and devastating destruction. A reminder that the course of history can be changed by a single determined man, and that the worlds he leaves behind are rarely the ones he promised to build.